Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard here on the campus of Brigham Young University, Idaho, and joining me today is Rod Gustafson. Rod, welcome.
Thank you, Brian.
Good to have you here, Rod.
It's great to be here.
Rod is currently producing for BYU Broadcasting in Provo, but has a long history in the TV industry and broadcasting. Probably started when you were about 15, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Somewhere
that's
in
when,
there.
Yeah, my dad had to drive me to work, so yeah.
Former president of Parent Previews,
Right.
movie reviewer and critic, so we can talk about that as well.
Sure.
From Alberta, Canada, our
Yes,
great friends to the
frosty north.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right. Let's talk about growing up for you. So how did that interest come about? If you're like me, I just was fascinated with all things over the airwaves. But how about you?
Yeah. Well, for me, I grew up in a home where the television was always on. So I was born in the early 1960s. Didn't used to sound so long ago, but now it does. And I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I had wonderful, wonderful parents. But boy, did my mom love television. And so the television was always on in our home. I mean, always on from when I woke up in the morning, went to bed, and it was just always there in our life. And so I had, I grew to be very interested in like, how does this work? And where are these people that I see on television and everything else? You know, as a little kid, you're wondering this. And then as I got a little bit older, started getting into my adolescent years, I kind of started resenting it. I was still very interested in it, especially the technology. I've always been a nerd. I love electronics and all of those things. But at the same time, started seeing just how much of a pull this was in my family. I was an only child, and so it was a real love-hate relationship. But then eventually I met a weatherman, the local TV weatherman. At this point, we weren't living in Vancouver, which is a big city. We had moved onto the Canadian prairies, living in a small city, Medicine Hat, Alberta, and I bumped into the weatherman in the grocery store and said, "Can I get a tour of the TV station?" And he gave me one, and I was hooked. I thought, well, there's other people working here. How can I work here? So.
And what was your first job? What did they give?
My first job was something called a telecine operator. So, what is a telecine operator? They don't have these people anymore. But back then, so a television station, basically all it's doing is, you know, when you're in a movie theater and there's a projector, which now is totally automated, but there used to be a person up there running the projector, and you're watching stuff on a screen. Well, a television station really is like that projector. But you get all sorts of different shows and advertisements and everything else that you're presenting on somebody's screen and millions of people's screens. And so basically what my job as a telecine operator was, some of the shows that we were running at that time, like The Love Boat, Charlie's Angels, Fantasy Island, all of these things, they come on reels of film. It's just 16 millimeter film. And they bicycle them around, not really on a bicycle, but cycle them around all these different television stations so they can air these things. So my job was, you would thread these films up into a special projector that's pointing into a camera lens, and then you would also have commercials. And this was the trick, because the commercials would come on little reels of film. They'd be 30 seconds long, sometimes 60 seconds, depends. And you had two projectors, and you had lots of commercials, and so you'd leave the show on one projector, and then some of the commercials would be on slides, what we would call, which were little 35 millimeter pieces of film. And so you'd have the slide projector that could show the slides too. So it was this thing where there would be a slide commercial. Here's what's on sale at Safeway, you know, and that's 30 seconds long, showing pictures of bananas and apples. And then you go to a commercial for fabric softener that's running off the film. And then you go back to a slide commercial, and during that moment, you're ripping that fabric softener commercial off there and putting on here's the new car of the day, and threading that through, and then you go back to your TV show on the other projector. So it was a real busy after-school job. And then on weekends, I was also a master control operator, which meant you sat in this little control room, and you're basically running the TV station. You know, I'm 15, 16 years old. There were two other guys from high school that worked there with me, and so the three of us, we just felt like we had the most amazing jobs.
Yeah,
and
powerful.
Yeah, it was. And sometimes we got in trouble because we were really stupid and did dumb things, like playing ping pong on the other corner of the studio during the 6 o'clock news, and our boss phones us the next day and says, I could hear that ping pong ball. Really? We didn't know that. So, yeah, all sorts of fun
So
stuff.
tell me a little bit about your career path. So that was your big start, but you've worked in broadcasting and associated things for quite a while. And then we can talk about, of course, your film critic days.
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess from there, it's kind of the typical story. You start off in your small town television station. I was one of those kids that I just, what do mom and dad know? I want to move out. And so dummy me, like, boy, my kids, they've figured it out. They still come and go from our house, and they get really good deals on room and board. I was an idiot. I left at 18 and then went to another television station. It was a little bit bigger market, and then went to a network station in Edmonton, Alberta, and worked there for a while. So just, the usual moving up. But during that time, though, and actually during that first period of time in that first television station, and this is what's marvelous about Latter-day Profiles, where we can talk so openly about these things. That is where my family were not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And back in those days in broadcasting, if the sales department didn't sell a spot, as we called them, so during the Love Boat, there's a 2-minute commercial break, 4 30-second commercials can fit in there. Well, if they didn't sell one of those, the master control operator would pick a public service announcement. And that's when I discovered what was called the Homefront series from what then was referred to as the Mormon Church. And I loved these things. I thought they were great. They were great messages about families and spending time together and all of these things which really resonated with me. And I was already going to church. I was going to, my family attended what we call in Canada the Anglican Church, Episcopalian Church. But it was kind of an on and off thing and whatnot. Didn't have many young people there. Nice elderly ladies with fancy hats, but not many young people. So as I was airing these Homefront public service announcements, I thought, first of all, I'm really interested in this religion. I'm fascinated by the importance of families. And second of all, I really would like to make commercials or something that looks like that. So I really wanted to get into church media. So a few years later, when I was working at this larger station in Edmonton, guess who I bump into? Another weatherman. Weathermen have been important to me. He started talking to me about the church. And I said, wait a minute, Eric, this is the Mormon church, right? He goes, yeah. He says, yeah. And he says, if you want to come over to my house and learn more, I said, sure. And by this point, I'd met a few people along the way. I had another friend from that earlier television station who had just joined the church. He was talking to me about it all the time. So I basically told Eric, the weatherman in Edmonton, I said, sure, I'll come on over. How can I join the church? And he's like, well, first of all, you got to learn a little bit more. So away I went. So that was really, I felt like the hand of the Lord just setting me up for this, really, really, truly. So then I wound up coming back to that television station in Medicine, which, by the way, just 2 weeks ago closed. Oh. So this is kind of a tender moment for me. It's almost like you've lost a member of your family. It really is. And so I wound up coming back to that television station, and it was managing the production area, some of the news areas, and commercial writing areas and whatnot. So managing most of everything except for technical area and sales department. And did that for a few years. But then it was during that time where I felt like, you know what, we air a lot of stuff here that I just had a child. My father passed away. I shouldn't say I had the child. My wife had the child. And my father had passed away. And you start thinking about things differently. I'm moving into my later 20s now and thinking, okay, I love this industry. I love the potential it has for doing so much good. But I got to figure out a way that I can be on that potential. And so that's where I started making some different decisions. And yeah.
Is that where you got interested in critiquing movies and giving some insight on that?
It was kind of there was a couple of nail-biting years in the middle there where my wife is looking at me and saying, actually, she is so supportive, but at the same time, like, so what are we doing? And we had my family, again, I'm an only child, and so it was my father. He had a half sister. She didn't have any children. So my father passed away. This aunt of mine, she had some serious health problems. And then my grandmother was going through health concerns. So we had a lot of family things that were going on at that time, too. And but as I'm working through those and really learning a lot about life and death and, and the plan and everything else, I was praying hard about, okay, what do I want to spend my life doing? I really want to stay in media. I love media, and again, the potential it has. So one day I was praying in our family room, and there was a Reader's Digest book on the coffee table. And I opened it up, and there was this article from a guy by the name of Michael Medved.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Medved, at that time, he had a PBS show going on here in the United States. And it was a movie review show that he was doing with another guy. And he was he was a little bit kind of the new Roger Ebert without quite the same high profile. But then Michael had just released a book that he wrote called Hollywood versus America. And it talked... this whole book was about the industry as Michael was seeing it, and about, I guess for lack of a better word, the manipulation that was going on in the industry to gain audiences. And a lot of it was about what we would call media literacy, selectivity bias, how certain topics were more important than other topics, and those topics were being shown in movies and television while other topics were being ignored. This was really interesting to me. And then, speaking of media literacy, I also became involved in Canada's media literacy movement at the time, and there was a lot happening there. So I eventually I was president of our media literacy organization in our province and working with the national one as well. And I felt like this is so important that people need to be able to think more critically about what they're seeing and hearing in media, reading in media, everything else. And it was like this whole world was open to me. And we were teaching it to a degree in our schools in Canada at the time. I mean, you've got an 11-year-old sitting at school, and here's this class of media literacy. He's not coming home and talking to mom and dad about selectivity bias or any of these things. So I felt like, how can we get this to the end of the row, i.e. parents and families? And then I started thinking about how many people I knew had said to me, oh, we spent $40 going to this movie the other night. Of course, home video was around, but theaters were where you watch movies. And, and we got a babysitter and everything else. And then you get there, and we had to walk out 20 minutes into the movie, and people complaining about movie ratings and everything, and all of this. And I thought, okay, somewhere, hopefully here, there's a way to solve this and bring the media literacy into it. So we created a movie review column that eventually we called Parent Previews. Earlier it was called Grading the Movies. What a great creative name. But and then we started marketing that to weekly newspapers, and we actually had quite a few weekly newspapers that were interested in this. So now I'm running my little syndication company. And then this is in the days of CompuServe before the internet. Oh, this is old. The internet was just barely starting, but there was this thing called CompuServe. And lo and behold, Roger Ebert writes to me, and he says, and I'd sent him a copy of this column, and I can't remember why I had, but he wrote back to me, and he said, I've met other people who have tried to do this, and it's been terrible, but you've figured this out. And he gave me the name of his syndication company and the person there that I should go talk to and everything. So we managed to actually get some traction on this. And meanwhile, I'm still doing TV news journalism. So I'm basically a stringer, a television news reporter in this little corner of the province of Alberta. So I'm doing that, and that's earning a little bit of money and whatnot. But then eventually we moved to Calgary, Alberta, where you could get into film screenings 3 weeks before the movie releases, that type of thing. And figured, okay, let's ride this train. Let's really do this. So, yeah. And then it became Parent Previews. We worked with the Disney Internet Group for a little while, for a couple of years, till they decided they didn't want to be on doing internet stuff anymore, which was kind of sad. And so then we took it back and kept doing it for probably way too long. But yeah, it was really interesting. And what I really appreciated about it is just how often, we get notes from parents and that type of thing saying, thank you. I never had really thought about the message in this particular movie, or it was more than media literacy is much more than how many gunshots are there, how many bad words are there, is there, a nudity scene in it. It's much more about, even those are important, but it's also about the messages that are in films too, and television shows.
So the height of the success, you're watching how many movies every year?
Oh, gee, I think in the earlier years, the release schedule that the film industry was doing was incredible. So we were probably easily at 800 movies in a year. We had weeks where, so my wife was working with me, another wonderful person, her name is Carrie. She was working with us as well. And so, yeah, we had weeks where, there's like 7 or 8 movies, and we're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to this one, who's going to that one, and just trying to keep all this coverage going. By the time we hit what we call the Great Recession in '07, then that really slowed down, and it never really came back to that release schedule we had in the '90s and the early 2000s. So, but yeah, it was a lot. And the biggest blessing I have is that I can't remember 99% of those movies, because I saw a lot of movies I really don't want to remember. And so I have to take notes, or somebody will say, hey, what movie? Because people are constantly, when you're a film reviewer, hey, Rod, what's a good movie to go see? I don't know.
I can't remember half
I'd
the
have to
names.
look it up on my phone, like, here's one I reviewed. So, yeah.
Well, part of that also pretty powerful, because you got to vote for like films that were really
Yeah.
good for awards and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was working, I was an accredited reviewer with Broadcast Film Critics, which they do the Critics' Choice Awards. They don't even call themselves the Broadcast Film Critics anymore. It's the Critics' Choice. I think it's just the Critics' Choice is the name that they're using now. Yeah, and I did that until, I was a member of that organization until a couple of years ago, and I feel it's really important if you're going to vote for something, you learn about this mechanism doing this. It's the same mechanism with the Oscars, where it's really about studios will pick movies that they want to promote to the critics with the hopes that this movie's going to win the big award. And which is kind of difficult, because sometimes the movie they want to win isn't the movie I want to win. So, yeah, it's a big machine, and so everything else. So once you get involved in those circles, it's hard. You really have to think critically and remember all the other movies you saw that maybe are more worthy of the award than the one that's being picked to have the $100,000 marketing budget behind it. So, yeah.
You moved to BYU Broadcasting about seven years ago or so.
Coming up on 7 years here.
What prompted that move? How did you
Well,
get there?
going way back to, I wanted to do something that contributed, like those Homefront commercials contributed to my life, and that's the amazing thing for me. Media brought me into the church, which I'm so grateful for, and so having an opportunity to be a part of that has just been such a huge blessing for me. So I'm one of those guys, when you say producer, I'm one of those producers. I'm the boring producer. I'm the guy who has to say, no, that's going to cost too much money. And I'm the guy who's, wrangling, me and my staff. We all work together on this, and a lot of what we call rights management, where everything is on the screen. You need to make sure that we're not infringing on anybody else's intellectual property, as we call it, and all that stuff. A lot of budgeting work and a lot of logistics work, coordinating communications, all that type of stuff. So, yeah.
Tell me, being involved with that, what's the satisfaction you get from working on the different programs and the different things that you do at BYU Broadcasting?
Just being able to contribute to programming that is making a difference in the world. Like, it just is such a blessing. It's what I wanted to do for so long. So even though, I'll watch one of these shows and I know the budget by heart, and I'll know, oh yeah, we had to clear that, and we had to do this and that. But the biggest thing for me is just being able to contribute something positive, that I can look at this and feel like I'm so glad I had a small part in this, and that's really the big payoff for me. and having my family be able to watch us and everything else is great. My wife knows what's on our network way better than I do because I just don't get enough time to watch it all. So,
what are some of the hurdles you have to jump through? Because we watch the shows, whatever they happen to be, and goes off with out of hits for us. But on the backside of things, the actors, the finance. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you have to jump through to make sure everything works the way it's supposed to?
Usually, a lot of legal stuff. I'm pretty blessed in that. Well, during my times of being self-employed, frankly, I really couldn't afford a lawyer for most of that. And so you learn to read contracts, and I did a lot of studying about intellectual property law and that type of thing. But that usually, because we're working now with mainstream production companies, and so it's business, and you've got to run it like business. You want to make sure that everything you enter into, that you're representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you need to remember that. But it is still business, and we have to use the funds that we have very carefully. And of course, in Hollywood, funds go fast. And so just being able to work out all of those things. So there's always, getting the agreement just right. The other thing that we need to make sure is that when you pay for creating a program, you want to have the right rights so that we can use it and so that we can look at distribution worldwide and that type of thing too. So there's a lot of fascinating things that you learn about intellectual property law and about negotiation and everything else. So can't say it's my favorite thing to do in life, but it has been incredibly interesting, and I'm grateful to have had that opportunity because it does allow you to push that work forward, which is wonderful.
I want to draw on your years of being a critic and then also media literacy. What's your take on the state of media right now and the importance of something like BYU Broadcasting in that mix?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's kind of sad. Media literacy, first of all, in the United Kingdom, it was a big deal for a long time. Most people don't know this. The Catholic Church was heavily involved in media literacy decades ago. They're one of the real pioneers about media literacy because they were concerned way back in the 1920s about messages in cinema and whatnot. And then the United Kingdom, they were very heavily involved in media literacy, and then Canada became involved as well. So during like 1970s, 80s, into the 1990s, this was a big deal. And now it's kind of faded off, and I'm like, oh, wow, we need this more than ever right now because, the current state of the situation right now with media is that we need critical thinking more than ever before. And I mean, here we are on the threshold of AI, and even keep AI literally out of the picture at the moment, we still just have so many people wanting to talk to us meaning us as the public, and giving us messages that are often being presented to us as being factual when really they're not factual. They're opinions, they're editorial. We used to have clear labels for that. Those labels are all blurred now. And so it's more important than ever before that not even just young people, but all of us just really be able to look at media with a very careful eye of what is the message, what is the real message here, and then also learning to fact check. As I told you, I did television journalism for a number of years, and all of us are biased. There's no journalist that doesn't have a bias. We all try and keep that bias in check when we're doing our work as a journalist. But you still, as a viewer, if you're watching one news channel, that's not good. You need to be watching 2, 3, or more, or ideally, you need to get back into reading the news and pick 2 or 3 sources there too, and help your kids, help your family to do that as well. We really are living in a time where the public should be the journalist, where we're getting raw information fed to us now more than ever before, but that raw information is often distorted. And so it's really up to us to be able to take that information and figure out, okay, what is really going on here? What am I seeing for common messages that'll allow me to figure this out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as we wrap up, your best advice for parents How do you help your kids out with that? What's your best advice?
Well, I think the best advice is just really, you don't want to make people so skeptical that they don't believe anything. Media is so important in a democracy. We badly need media. But to be able, just what I was saying, to just be able to really think about that carefully. And when you families aren't watching television together anymore, they aren't reading news together anymore, but you still have an opportunity. This goes back to a study, like I think 2 or 3 decades ago, about the importance of having dinner together as a family. Take that opportunity to talk about hard things like politics, hard things like environment issues, and many other things, and find out what your kids know. Find out what they're learning. What are they thinking? And then, even as parents, put your biases aside for a minute. Listen to your family, your other family members, and allow that freedom of speech over your dinner table. But that's what helps us all to be able to think more critically and to try and work through these things.
Rod, it's been a pleasure. Rod Gustafson, producer for BYU Broadcasting, and a long history in television and a critic. Thanks for taking some time, Rod, to talk with us.
Thank you. It was
Appreciate
great
it, Rod.
being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.